Greetings once more this morning in the wonderful name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I greet you and we doing very well, and by the grace of the Lord, I still believe that very well and safe. I want to thank God for this time because God has been God through all these things, but God has shown to be a wonderful. Thank Him for that because He's a good God who take care of His children. He's well taking care of us, and we thank Him for that because we are still protected. We are still highly. I want to thank God this morning. I still have a message in my heart that I want to share with you. The message is titled, When Jesus with the preaching. So we are 9. Much time had been lost and sailing had already become us because by now it was after the Day of Atonement. So Paul warned them, men, I can see our voyage and bring great loss to ship and cargo, and to our own lives also. But the centurion, instead of listening, said, follow the advice of the pilot and the ship. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. This was a harbor in grade facing both southeast and northwest. I think we can number 18, 19, 20 so that we can understand what is the message. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard, threw the ship tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and the storm continued raging, we find hope of saved. Just read from the Bible, we hear about Paul who was going to Rome to be prosecuted for being a child of God. The Bible tells me that when they were about to leave another harbor where they were, Paul gave these people an advice. He said to them, proceed with our sailing because I can see that our journey is going to be disastrous. We are going to lose the cargo, and we're also going to lose the ship. And our lives also are going to be in trouble. The Bible tells me that they never listened to Paul, the owner of the ship, and they decided to listen to the majority. They decided to listen to people who don't know anything about God. But Paul gave an advice to the owner of the ship and the pilot that it's very, very, very unsailable. We are not it, but the majority, they said, going. So when Jesus is not in it, things turn terrible. Things turn too awkward when Jesus is not in it. They refuse the advice of Paul because the advice of Paul was spiritual. Paul can see in the spirit that our future journey is disastrous. We are going to be in trouble. But they decided not to listen to Paul. They decided not to listen to the of Paul. So the Bible tells me that the storm started brewing. It was a great storm in the sea. The storm was against them. The storm came battering them. And the Bible tells me they were so frustrated. They started offloading the ship. They started cargo into the sea. And the things got wet. Everything was just against them. The future was bleak. There was no hope for the future. The Bible that they spent some days, many days in the sea without seeing light, without seeing the stars, without seeing. They spent days not knowing what is it today. They spent some days without eating and drinking. They never knew it is the morning. They never knew it is the evening. They never knew it is the day. They never knew anything. Why? They decided to refuse to listen to the advice of Paul. They decided to ignore the advices that Paul gave them. Why? Because Paul was a child of God. So, when your future is bleak, you don't see tomorrow. These people, they never saw tomorrow. They never saw the day. They never saw the light. Why? The storm was too hot. The storm was too terrible. So, I want to encourage you people that we must listen to the advices. We must listen to the advices of Jesus. We must listen to the advices so that we can prosper. The Bible tells me that where advices are many, the plans become so greatly achieved. So if there is no advices, most especially spiritual advice, because in the days that we are living in the we need spiritual advices. We need advices which are spiritual. We don't need physical advices. We need spiritual advices. So we must listen. Because when we listen to God, if these people could listen to Paul, when he was giving advices, there was going to be no loss to cargo. There was going to be no loss to the sheep. There was going to be no loss. Why? Because they listened to the spiritual advices of Paul. So in our lives, we must allow Jesus to give us counsel. Because the counsels of Jesus, they are godly counsel. When he advises us, through the word. If we take the advices, we shall live. There will be no loss of life. There will be no damages. There will be no loss of property. There will be no loss of business. Why? We listened to the advices which are spiritual, which are looking for the future. Many times we fail spiritual, the future. We lose what God has. So we must learn to listen to the advices, most especially spiritual. Tells me in verse 22, Paul came to them. He said to them, if you listened to me, we wouldn't have been in this situation. If you listened to me, there wouldn't be any loss of cargo. But he said to them, be courageous, because God, if you are, it means you have of what the future will bring. Why God came to Joshua, he said, Joshua, be courageous, because the future is well with you. According to my statutes, if you go according to my commands, future is good for you. So be courageous. So Paul told these people that be courageous. Don't panic, because I spoke to you. I gave you spiritual answers. You never took my word. You of the masses. But now be courageous, because God is going to show his salvation. In verse number 31, he said to them, stay in the ship for your salvation. Don't run away. Many times we make mistakes. We don't listen to the spiritual advice, listen to the spiritual counsel, and when things start to be ugly, we run away. But stay in the ship. Don't try to run away. God has shown up in me. The angel of the Lord came to me and he said to me, there is not going to be any loss of life. Yes, we are going to lose the cargo. We are going to lose the ship of life. Mark my words, he said to them. And he said to them, because there is not going to be anyone who's going to be lost. Suppose you took my advices, my spiritual advices, you shouldn't have been in this situation. So I want to encourage you today that even when things are tough, even when we find ourselves in the situation where we don't see the future, there is no light, there is no day, there is no anything, I'm telling you that control. Jesus is still in it. When Jesus is in it, things will be well. When Jesus is in it, things will go right. When Jesus is in it, things will stop. The Bible tells me that the disciples of Jesus were crossing over and Jesus was in the ship. He was sleeping in the ship. The Bible tells storms of life, the storms in the sea, they came and they battled. The Bible tells me that it was sinking. The water was in the ship, and the disciples of Jesus, they said to Jesus, "Can you see?" And the Bible tells me that Jesus woke up and sea. He spoke to the winds. He spoke to the waves. He said, "Be still." And Jesus is in it. Things will go right. There will never be any loss of cargo. There will not be any loss of life. There will never be any loss of anything. Jesus is in it. But the problem is, in the ship where Paul was boarding, Jesus was not in it. It's like in the ship where this man, Jonah, boarded to Tarshish. The ship was in the absence of Jesus. Jesus was not in the ship. Actually, to simplify it, Jesus was against the ship because Jonah ran away from God. He boarded a ship to Tarshish while God wanted him to go to Nineveh. And the Bible tells me they throw the cargo into the sea. So let me tell you, Christians, let me tell you, everybody, if we don't let advices, spiritual advices, we are in trouble. Our lives will never go as God has planned them. Be in trouble many times. The Bible tells me that Jesus spoke to the winds. He spoke to the waves and they stopped. They listened to him because he was in the ship. The Bible tells me if Jesus is around, if Jesus is in it, there will be life. There is hope that there is future. There is hope that things will go well. So if Jesus is in it, things become simple. Right when Jesus is in it. But they decided to overlook the advices of Paul. Many times in our lives, we have failed. We have been battered. Things never went well in our life. Why? Because we chose to ignore the spiritual advices. We listen to the physical and carnal advices, looking at the wind and the stars. At the northeast, northwest, we are looking at the spiritual. We are spiritual beings. We have been made of the Spirit. We are not flesh. We are not just carnal. We are spiritual. And when we are advised, we must know that our advices must also be spiritual. Because spiritual sees the future. In the Spirit, we see the future. The sinner said, Jesus is the future. If Jesus is in my side, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Life is worth living just Jesus lives. So I know that we are nothing if Jesus is the one who gives our lives life. If if Jesus is not in my life, so if Jesus is not in need, that is in danger, there will be loss of property, good, there will be loss of opportunities. But if Jesus is in need, things will is worth living. If Jesus is in it, the sisters of this man Lazarus, they said to Jesus, we know Jesus, if you were here, our brother wouldn't have died. If you were here, we would have been mourning the death of our brother. If you were here, we wouldn't have mourned the death of Lazarus. We knew if you were here, Lazarus will be alive. So I want to tell you that if Jesus is in need, there is life. If Jesus is in need, there is future. Let me tell you, we don't have to run away because Jesus has promised that he will save us. Jesus has showed up through an angel to Paul. He said, Paul, don't worry. There will be loss of anything. But even a small piece of the hair of all these people in the ship is not going to be lost. I have given you these people. I have given these people to you. Let me tell you, God is all that we can ask and hope for. So he said to Paul, ship is going to be destroyed. The cargo is going to be lost, but there will never be any loss of life. The Bible tells me that they ate. After eating, when they have strength, they started throwing the grain into the sea. Verse 38. They started throwing the grain in. God's Jesus was not in aid. They started throwing. You know, there are many people who are throwing their future, who are throwing their livelihood, throwing their everything, their positions into the sea. Why? Because Jesus is not in it. How many under the bus? How many people have thrown their future under the moving train? Why? Because Jesus was not in it. So Paul, and after eating, they had the strength to take the cargo, to take the grain, throw it into the sea. So let me challenge you. Allow Jesus to be in it. Allow Jesus to be in everything that you are doing in your life. Allow Jesus to be in your life. And the other prayers, let me tell you, if Jesus is not in it, people plot to kill one another. They plotted to kill Paul. Why? Because Paul had a mission to go and preach the gospel of Jesus in Rome. Jesus wanted Paul to appear in Rome to represent him. And these people, they plotted killing Paul. But the Bible tells me that there was a man who loved Paul, who listened to Paul. And the Bible tells me he refused because he loved Paul. And let me tell you, will try to kill you. The devil will try to frustrate you. The devil will try to take the future that is in your life. The devil sees the future. That's why he doesn't want you to understand and to listen to advice, spiritual advices. But let me tell you, Paul had a mission to go and represent heaven in Rome. And the angel told him that you go and preach the gospel in Rome. You will never die. And the Bible tells me, Paul said to them, they must sail out of the ship. And they started sailing out. And the Bible tells me that no one died. No one lost life. They used the parts of the ship to sail over the sea. Let me tell you, grace will set us free when we listen to the advices and spiritual advices. Grace will carry us through. When the devil wants to kill us, Jesus will show up. Because when Jesus is in need, things will go well. When Jesus is in need, life will be spared. When Jesus is in need, our future is intact. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, I can face everything. Because with Jesus, things are possible. He said in the Bible, nothing is impossible with me. What is impossible with man is possible with me. So, let me encourage you today that grace will set you free. These soldiers, these prisoners, and everyone on board in the ship that Paul was in, no one lost life. Why? Because Jesus appeared to Paul through an angel. He brought the message to Paul through an angel that you will reach Rome and you will represent me. So let me encourage you this morning that allow Jesus to be in your life, in the situation that we are in. In the situation that we are in, where we are facing a bleak future, there are people who are discouraged. There are people who are throwing everything away. There are people who are so frustrated. But let me tell you, it doesn't matter the raging winds of life. It doesn't matter the raging storms of life. Jesus will show up. Jesus will reveal himself. Jesus will come on board and save your life. I want to tell you that don't look at the raging winds. Don't look at the raging sea, but look at Jesus. He's able to show up when things are terrible. He's able to show up when hope is all gone. Jesus showed up to Paul when they were not knowing which day they are in, when they've never seen stars, where they've never seen clouds, where they've never seen the day for many days. But let me tell you, he can show up in your life. He can show up and show you what he wants you to do. The Bible tells me that Paul told them that no one will die. No one will lose life. So I'm telling you that if you stay in the ship, if you don't go anywhere, if you stay in Jesus, if you stay with Jesus, let me tell you, you will never lose your life. You will never lose anything. God will take care of you. God will see you through. I know of corruption. See me through the storms of poverty. He will see me through the storms of lack. He is Jehovah Jireh. He's the one who provides, and he will provide for me. He will